All right, hey there, comrades. Welcome to the Revolution Report. My name's Donald. I'm the host of the channel if you are watching for the first time. And today we have another revolutionary reaction. We've done a couple of these on the channel before. I'm trying to do quite a bit more of them. And the reason for that is because I've come across a show called Undercover Boss. And this is essentially just capitalist propaganda. I mean, to put it in the most base terms, it's a show that's a reality show that's been showed on CBS, and it's also being reposted on this YouTube channel called Dabble. And I mean, when I first saw it, it seemed like it was a bit staged. It's basically the theme of this show is that the CEO of a company goes undercover as a new worker at one of the chain restaurants at, there's Johnny Rockets, or I think there's McDonald's, and all these kind of fast food chains mostly, where the CEO goes undercover, pretends to be a new employee of the company to basically do one of two things. To either find some worker that's doing something completely unbelievable and put him or her in their place and fire them or whatever, or they find some worker that has some sort of terrible tragedy that's happened in their life, and they do something to help them. But the kind of stuff, I'm not going to give it away, the kind of stuff they do to help these workers is just really unbelievable when you look at it from a Marxist standpoint. And spoiler alert, they don't offer to raise their salaries, okay? So this one that I'm going to be talking about today is the first one I saw in this series. I'm going to try to do more reactions to all different ones because they are all really weirdly funny in their own special way. But this one is about an undercover boss of Johnny Rockets, which is like a fast food chain that is not actually that popular in the United States. I think not in comparison to McDonald's or anything, but I have seen it in my life. This restaurant, or in the United States when I used to live there, and the CEO goes and basically spies on the workers there and finds this one worker who has a really tragic story. And again, to me, my first impression was that it was staged, but apparently I read on the internet, apparently it's not staged, but you'll see for yourself. So without further ado, I'm going to start the video and stop it when I feel like some commentary is necessary. So let's jump right in here and I'll start the video.
Tom, you want to take this as the
Sure,
others?
absolutely.
The same ladies with the milk, and just don't forget your smiley faces.
Okay, thank you. Here you go. And let me get you some ketchup also. All right, this is my first work of art. Oops, it's not the best artwork of all time. I gotta go to art school to get better at
Don't
this.
forget your ketchup smiley faces, guys.
Even though I've yet to make a good one.
Tom's smiley faces are horrible. They're like third grade smiley faces.
That's supposed to be a happy face.
I think he was very nervous and he was just trying to rush it. It's also important to tell him why.
So you see this kind of like humanization of the CEO that's going to this this restaurant and pretending to be one of the rank and file workers trying to learn the ropes from someone. So that's the scene they set for this, and let's see where it goes farther.
How you doing it, especially if you draw like Tom.
There you go.
Anybody
Yeah.
might be done, grab their plates,
Oh,
get them off the
yeah.
table.
Can I take that plate away from you? All right.
That's right, stack him up. There
Thank
you go,
you.
there's another one. See how much you can handle.
Playing with fire.
Big guys should be able to hold big
Okay,
plates.
that's it.
You got big hands, you can grab 4 or 5 cups at the same time, right? Boom, I grab them, I got them, I'm going, I'm over here.
I was starting to break out into a sweat. I needed to pick up the speed, and you don't have a chance to catch your breath. And it's like a little mini workout we had going on in there.
Do you want to
What an educating experience for the CEO to do some actual work for a change, as opposed to whatever a CEO does in comparison to the rank and file workers that make the company work.
take a break?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Ah, feels so good out here. You know what? In the summertime, there's nothing like the ocean breeze, man.
Oh, I love it.
Nighttime, you can just open your windows.
Yeah.
See, that to me, when I first saw that, there's nothing like the ocean breeze. That kind of makes me feel like it's staged a little bit. But I I don't want to say definitively if it's staged or not, because if this guy's story is true, which you're about to hear, it's really sad and tragic, and I really feel for the guy, actually. So let's take a listen.
So where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Lancaster, and then
Where's that?
Pennsylvania.
Okay. Do you have kids?
Yeah, I do. I have kids. I actually lost one. My daughter was murdered. I found out who it was. I took the law in my own hands. I went out and I assaulted him. And I don't remember much. I blacked out. And by the time I came through, I was already going to jail. I really hurt the guy pretty bad. He's still alive. He's not dead, thank God. So I ended up serving 3 years for it.
Tony told me that his daughter's murder is still an unsolved crime, but he believes he caught the guy who did it.
I lived under the boardwalk then for 3 months. I kept a couple blankets under there. So I turn my chair and I take my blankets and my backpack and go under there and sleep, go in one of the casinos in the bathroom and wash up.
Wow.
And
So, you know, this guy's story that he's telling the CEO, it's freaking tragic, of course. You know, his daughter was murdered. He had to live under a bridge or whatever. It's crazy. But let's see how the CEO actually tries to make his life better in this situation after hearing this terrible story of how this guy's daughter was killed and his life was basically reduced to ruin.
I kept coming here and I kept seeing this sign, hey, Johnny Rockets is coming. And then one day the owner was sitting out there. So I just asked him and I told him the truth about my, about my background. And the guy gave me a job down here, man. And I owe him so much for taking me off the street. I don't know. Ever since I started working here, it's like my life was just starting to make a change, man, and it's incredible.
Tony, my experience with you was phenomenal. You were inspiring, and I really did learn a lot from you. And we talked about kids. You know, it hurts me so much to hear what you had to go through, but you'll never forget your daughter. But I want you to take advantage of all the time you get with your other members of your family. What I want to do for you is send you on an all-expenses-paid trip to an amusement park of your choice, so you can spend some quality time with your kids.
Okay, so the way the CEO wants to make this guy's life better and make him feel good is to pay for his family, what's left of it, and him to go to an amusement park? I mean, that's like absolutely ridiculous. It's like crumbs off the table for the bourgeois class. It's like, and what's interesting is if you look at the comments section for this video, a lot of people, because of the kind of really touching and tragic story of this guy, you know, what he has to deal with, which a lot of people who, you know, probably a lot of people can relate to, who have also been through traumatic situations like this. The CEO, to make him feel better and to improve the look of the company and himself, is to pay for him to go to an amusement park, okay? But that's not all. It goes on.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. They're going to appreciate it.
On top of that, there is a charity, it's called the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Johnny Rockets is going to make a $5,000 donation in Nikki's name.
That's great, man.
And so we're going to do that in Nikki's honor.
All right, so $5,000, I mean, that's for a company, not even really that much. It's like kind of chump change, a cheap way. Of course, we see how charity is used. It's been used by capitalists for centuries, basically, to justify, well, the kind of mass exploitation of labor that has been going on for centuries, that Karl Marx identified and outlined in his 3-tome works of Capital. And CEOs have been, and capitalists have been using charity as sort of an I'm sorry or kind of justification for that. And $5,000 is like almost nothing. But
Thank you so much.
Sure. Tony, I mean, the tragedy that happened with your daughter, your living situation where you're under the boardwalk, it's hard for me to even fathom what that must have been like.
I was really nervous coming out here because actually I was taking off time and didn't know how I was going to make my rent. I don't want to go back out there no more.
okay, so the guy can't pay his rent, right? Because he's working at Johnny Rockets for, I don't know, probably pretty close to minimum wage. I mean, a $5,000 donation to a charity is not going to help him, nor is a trip to an amusement park.
One of the things I want to do to help you get back on your feet is to give you $5,000 and for you to be able to make sure you have a roof over your head for a long, long time.
Okay, so $5,000. And by the way, this video was made, I looked at it, it was within the last year or two. Okay, so I'm thinking about how much rent costs in the United States, how much it's increased since coronavirus, since the Western sanctions against Russia backfired and caused runaway inflation. I'm just thinking, how could $5,000 allow him to have a roof over his head for any longer than 5 months? And that's assuming he pays $1,000 a month in rent, which is quite unlikely in this day and age. You know, like this is, I mean, the show really captures, you know, emotion and the people, the reactions of people to these things. These people who have been kicked and on the ground and have gone through traumatic stuff, not able to understand that this situation they're in, working, like having to work long hours just to be able to pay their rent, is the problem in general. I mean, it's obviously the social issue of capitalism that keeps him in this position, and the CEO gives him $5,000. I mean, people watching this channel are at least, you know, turned on to the idea of Marxism-Leninism, of communism, the understanding that capitalism is an exploitative system. I mean, to anyone who has at least the slightest understanding of that, I think $5,000 is kind of, you know, insulting when the CEO is saying that that's going to actually keep a roof over his head for a significant amount of time. That's barely going to do anything.
Thank you. Nobody's ever done something like that for me.
You deserve it.
Thank you so much.
Geez, yeah, so a trip to an amusement park, $5,000 to a charity that is money that this guy can't even use to better his terrible situation that he's in, and $5,000 to keep a roof over his head for the next several months until that runs out, and the kind of fast food worker salary that he's on is not going to sustain him anymore, and he's going to have to continue chasing breadcrumbs just to survive. I mean, what I was wondering when I saw this video is why didn't the CEO offer to raise his salary if he's such a highly valued worker, and the CEO sees that and he wants to help him out, he should raise his salary and make it so that he actually has a living wage. I mean, this is something that, like, I've seen in other videos all over the place, and news reports about this as well. These fast food workers that have been working at McDonald's or Wendy's or wherever for literally decades, and they've given their lives to their fast food company that they worked at. You know, there's this sort of misconception that only teenagers and people who are between jobs work at fast food restaurants, but that's not the case. You know, there's tons of people who are working in the fast food industry in the United States who have relied on that to support their families for the longest time. And you know, I probably should do a reaction video to some of these news reports I've seen across the internet and YouTube as well, where there's been a lot of them on ABC News, NBC News also, where they do reports about these fast food workers who have been in this position for decades. They do interviews with the managers of the place saying, oh, he's just always coming to work with a smile on his face. He's one of our most dedicated workers and whatnot, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just wondering, like, why do these people have to continue to work so hard and just to feed their family on this minimum or at least low wage job if they're so valued by the company? Why after decades doesn't the company give them enough money so that they don't have to work as hard as they've been working for the past several decades just to make ends meet? That's something that I think about when I see this, and I don't know, maybe it's just me because I've read about Marxism, or because, you know, I'm a journalist and I've been watching how unequal the world has become over the last several years. I just watch this and I think that it's just like sad to see people in this position, and also pathetic on the side on the side of the CEO that's trying to basically exploit this for some sort of PR benefit to the company. And basically what it looks like to me is also that this kind of amounts to basically the CEO spying on their workers, because this is one episode of it where obviously they're trying to make it look like the CEO's doing this guy a favor and everything, but there's also a lot of episodes where the workers at the company are, and we also don't know if these people are installed or whatever, or if it's all staged, but people at the company have been so miserable working there for so long that they have a bad attitude. And you know, instead of trying to change the conditions for these people at work, or, you know, giving them a human wage, the CEO spies on them and then fires them on the spot. So we can, in the future, we can do some reaction videos to that as well. It's just really interesting, and it's kind of a short video. I wanted to do this because it's a short video. It's a bit experimental right now on the channel because I'm using a new streaming software. So to drag out the live stream a little bit, I'd like to answer any questions you guys might have, not necessarily connected to the video, or maybe connected to the video, about international politics or anything, you know, stuff I do on most of my live streams. So if you have any questions, just put it in the chat right now, and I'll see if I can get to them. That's true. They give to charity because they can't get tax deductions for building statues to themselves. That's true. But I'm sure they would love to, I'm sure they would love that. The sad part is that CEO is one of the more generous capitalists. Definitely true. Definitely true. I read that cops did the same thing to fix the PR of police departments. Yeah, Richard Fernando, that's a good point. I mean, I grew up with that TV show. I remember Cops. It's just an interesting thing that I realized when I was growing up was watching the show Cops as a kid, right? Which obviously shows only the most polished situations in which cops are apprehending some, I don't know, you know, they're trying to portray them as like loser drug dealers, thieves, bad people. And then at the same time when I was coming of age, you know, stuff like the Black Lives Matter movement came out, people taking videos exposing police brutality, and it's just the reality came, the reality of the situation with the police in the United States just came in direct contradiction with shows like Cops. Definitely, it was a huge PR stunt. What's been the reaction to Gorbachev's death that you've experienced? That's a good question. Well, the experience, the reaction in Russia for most people has been, you know, they don't feel like they've been losing anything significant. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw RT's coverage on the death of Gorbachev, but I was actually presenting that day, and we had a lot of guests on there, experts, mostly Russians, but also we had some Americans as well, and really the understanding that Gorbachev was super popular in the West and Gorbachev is super unpopular in Russia is completely correct. I mean, Gorbachev basically has pretty much all the blame in the eyes of many, many Russians for the fall of the Soviet Union and the catastrophic conditions that existed in Russia during the 1990s. In the West, you know, they hail him for ending the Cold War and ending the totalitarian Soviet system. But, you know, when you look at Gorbachev's actual deeds, he just surrendered. It was an act of surrender in the Cold War. He ended the Cold War because he basically he signed the Soviet Union's death warrant. You know, nuclear disarmament was completely in favor of the United States and the Western powers. It was basically handing victory on to the West on a silver platter. And that's how, you know, the Russians see it for the most part. And when I did interviews with people on Russia Today, it was basically the same thing. When we interviewed Russians and pro-Russian people from the West, same story. Gorbachev was responsible for terrible things and never owned up to them either, because even after the fall of the Soviet Union, he didn't renege on anything he did. I spoke with this guy, Dan Kovalik, who's a trade union activist in the West, and he made a really good point that the fall of the Soviet Union did not actually only create terrible hardships for Russians and the post-Soviet sphere, although obviously that was where the most of it was, where most of these hardships were, but it also created enormous hardships for the Western workers' movements, because at least during the Cold War, the capitalist countries in the West had to compete with the high degree of workers' rights that was in the communist world. And because of that, we saw a seriously widespread swath of trade unions in the West. They were at their height of power during the Cold War as well. And all of a sudden, the Soviet world collapsed, and the capitalists said, okay, we can go back to basically running capitalism as it was in the Gilded Age, before the Cold War, before the Second World War, where we don't have to give a crap about workers' rights because, we don't have to worry about them going and defecting to the Soviet Union or becoming a communist, which would spell serious problems for the Western countries. It spelled serious problems in countries in the periphery during the Cold War, when U.S. imperialism and Western imperialism in general were trying to exploit these countries, and they said, well, we're going to go to communism because we want to have ownership over the natural resources and the labor of our own country. So that's also another interesting thing. I shed no tears for Gorbachev's death. I mean, I consider him a villain. I really consider him a villain that history, and I also think that history will remember him as a villain as well. So I find it hard to be sympathetic towards Gorbachev. I don't know if the quote is true, but Deng Xiaoping allegedly said after meeting Gorby, this man may appear smart, but is in fact stupid. Yeah, I gotta agree with you there. I really think he was I think he was pretty stupid and naive. His idea of universal human values was something that Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher at the time were not on the same page with. I mean, they loved Gorbachev because they were like, this guy is going to sabotage our biggest enemy, and that is communism, workers' power. Everyone knows Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher were, puppets of the capitalist class. They completely deregulated their economies. Margaret Thatcher led a war against her own people, against the coal miners' unions, against any sort of organized labor in the country. If you don't know about that, you should read about this sort of internal war that Margaret Thatcher waged against specifically the coal miners' unions, which were some of the most powerful trade unions in Great Britain at the time, and some of the most radical. They were filled with socialists and communists that wanted to make the world, or at least their country, a lot friendlier to the working class. So, yeah, so that's my reaction to that video and my answers to some of the questions you put in the chat. But I'm going to try to do more of these reaction videos in the future. So, and try to master this new streaming software I'm using so that we can get some more content out there, some more original content, and we can keep laughing and crying at the way these CEOs are trying to exploit the suffering of their workers. So, anyway, on that note, please, if you like this video, make sure to like it, share it around, subscribe to the channel. We've been seeing very low view counts lately, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm speaking against Ukraine and in favor of the Russian special military operation. I mean, ever since that started, and I'm not the only one who's been saying this, but also my colleagues at RT who have their own YouTube channels, they've been saying it's become basically impossible to seriously grow the channel since that happened. So the only way to do that now is basically by word of mouth. So as I said, if you like the video, please like, share, subscribe. Hope to see you on the next video, and workers of the world unite.